Hello everyone and welcome back to where we sometimes talk about thrillers on Thursdays. And if you're wondering why the intro of the video is gone with the branch and why the video quality might look a little bit different, I talked about that at the beginning of my last video. And I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent, so feel free to just click forward until the graphic novels start appearing on the screen. But if I seem off in this video, I'm very sleep deprived and I don't have friends I can ask these questions. I mean, I do have friends. I have a good amount of friends, but none of them really deal with sleep issues. But I'm just curious if I can get any advice from those of you who happen to be watching my videos. I have been incapable of falling asleep or staying asleep past 3-4 a.m. for going on months now, and it's getting to the point where it's really impacting me mentally. And I've been seeing a psychiatrist for a while because I've always had sleep issues. I got on trazodone to help me fall asleep, and that has been a godsend, just amazing and wonderful, but it has a really short period that it will keep you asleep. But I normally wake up at 3-4 a.m., cannot fall back asleep. Again, I probably shouldn't be asking for advice on YouTube videos, but if you have any advice beyond just what you standardly see on the internet of exercising more, turning on flux or kind of those yellow filters on things, because I'm already doing those things. Again, I just figured, I'm sleep deprived. I normally wouldn't ask things like this, but just please let me know if you've had similar issues, what has really helped you. But anyway, today I'm gonna be filming a video I've been meaning to film for a really long time, and that is all of the horror graphic novels and mangas that I've read over the past few years. I've read quite a good number, especially within the past year, but I tend to not talk about them in my annual wrap-ups for whatever reason. I try and keep those strictly to books. So I think I have 13 or 14 I'm going to talk about, so these are going to be pretty rapid fire reviews. And for these, we are going to start off, the lowest rated one I have is 2 stars and the highest I have is 5 stars. So I'm just going to kind of start off and go from not least to most favorite, but just kind of by candle rating. So first, let's talk about the graphic novels that I've read that I would rate with 2 creepy candles. So I only really have one that I would put into this category, and that's one I read in the end of 2021, and that is Moon of the Snowblind by Gary Kelly. I was visiting family in Iowa over Thanksgiving. Some of my family lives on Spirit Lake, Iowa, and we would visit, every year growing up. And one thing, you can just Google it, that's common to visit in Spirit Lake is the cabin of Abby Gardner, where her family was murdered. And whenever I was little visiting this museum, of course, you're only ever getting the white perspective. And so when I was in a local bookshop in Iowa, and this is advertised, and this is how it was advertised, as it being sort of the tale told, the true story from the Native American and white perspective, I was really, really intrigued and so excited and picked this up. And while I really enjoyed the artwork, this was still 80 to 90% the white perspective. So I didn't really learn much more than what I had seen from already visiting the museum, a few times when I was little. So it was a letdown in that sense. And I just think it shouldn't have been marketed this way, because they were marketing as sort of seeing both sides. And I just didn't really feel that was the case, even if I do think that was the author's intention, but it really just did not come across and translate in my opinion. Now we're going to move into the graphic novels that I would rate 3 out of 5 creepy candles. First is Thornhill by Pam Smye, and this was recommended to me by Getting Higgy With It. I'll have her channel linked down below. I absolutely love her. And this is sort of parallel plot lines, and it's told partially in text and partially in graphic novel form. But back in time, we have Mary, who's an orphan at the Thornhill Institute, and she's just horribly bullied by one girl in particular. And then it also takes place years later when Ella is new in town and she visits the dilapidated, abandoned Thornhill Institute, and maybe or maybe not start seeing some ghosts. I can absolutely see why she would recommend this to me, because even just the cover, the premise of the story, it's very gothic and creepy. It's right up my alley. I really enjoyed pieces of the story back in time, and I really enjoyed the present day story. My only critique with this, and it's going to be the exact same critique with the next graphic novel I'm going to talk about, is a little bit too repetitive for me. It was just so much constantly of her being bullied by the same person over and over again, and her going into a room and being upset about it. And so I think I might have enjoyed this more if it was just a straight up novel, getting more into a character study, because in graphic novel form, it was a lot of repetition, but again, overall still did really enjoy it. Then is Double Walker by Michael Conrad. This was recommended by my friend's boyfriend, Steve. And he's actually written a couple books recently, so who knows, maybe I'll be reviewing them on this channel. But to be clear, he didn't write this graphic novel, he recommended it. And this takes place in Scotland, and Coley and Gemma and their carefree and childless days are coming to an end because it's sort of their last big trip since she's pregnant. So they're excited to visit these Scottish Highlands, but then some murder starts occurring, paranoia, violence. This has some fantasy elements, really, really, really graphic and gory. I did enjoy the artwork so much. I enjoyed a really good percentage of this book, but when I said that it irritated me a little bit in the same sense of Thornhill, that was precisely because there were a lot of scenes over and over again of repetition of the girlfriend or wife, I can't remember if they're married or not, of her going missing at night and maybe doing something she shouldn't be doing, and the boyfriend getting upset, and then her going missing again, and then him getting upset. It happens like 5 times. So again, it was just a little bit too much repetition for me, but I thought the gore was amazing, which feels like a weird thing to say, but since this is a video about horror graphic novels, that's going to be a theme that comes up a lot. But I think if you do want to read some Scottish Highlands horror, this is a really, really fun one. Now for the rest of the video, we are going to move into graphic novels that I would rate 4 out of 5 creepy candles. Even as I'm looking at this one I'm about to talk, maybe I should have given this 5 stars. It's a little bit tricky because so many of these I should have said at the beginning I read such a long time ago. But next is Fraction by Shintaro Kago. This is a manga that has a few different stories within it. This is hard to describe, but there's one main story at the beginning, and that main story is broken up into 2 pieces. The first half being about a serial killer, and the second half being about the manga artist writing about, coming up and sort of writing the story about the serial killer. So it's very meta and weird and really, really cool. This is horrifically graphic and just, you know, trigger warnings for everything you could possibly imagine. This one, out of I think everything I'm going to speak to, is the most horrifying. So just a really big warning. If you're not a true fan of gore and horror, I would not recommend this one. Even the cover, I felt a little bit uncomfortable putting up on the screen. But this one, even though I read it such a long time ago, really, really sticks out to me. And again, if you're a fan of meta horror, I think you would really, really like this one. Next, we have Infidel, and this is a good example of how this is not really in order of least favorite to favorites. This one I maybe should have put in the 3-star category. But Infidel is about an American Muslim woman and her multi-racial neighbors who move into a building haunted by entities that feed off xenophobia. And that concept, as I'm saying it, and as I was going into reading this, I was really, really excited for and intrigued by. I think the intersection of horror and race is really, really interesting. But I thought that the plot felt very surface level. I think I thought that it was going to be much deeper based off that premise. But I think I might have really enjoyed this one more if it was a book than as a graphic novel, because I thought that the author was going to go into those themes a lot more, but again, it just felt a little bit one note throughout the story, but a really interesting concept, and I did really, really enjoy the artwork. Next is one that I own and have on hand, and that is Through the Woods by Emily Carroll. This is probably one of the most popular ones that I'm going to be talking about today, and I just love the artwork so much. This is one where sometimes I just like to keep it. Normally, if you see the blank spot, normally I like to keep it there, but this is one that I just absolutely love to flip through. It's some of my favorite artwork out of any of the ones that I'm going to mention today, and this is a bunch of different short stories that are creepy and also deal with folklore. And I say this in my review on Goodreads, but I just want to decorate my entire apartment with all of, like, even just that. Oh my God, I just want to decorate my whole place with all of this artwork. I gave this 4 stars because I do really, really love it. But the only thing I will say is if it weren't for the artwork, I don't think I would love it as much, because the endings of all the stories just fell a little bit flat to me. And I'll be honest, the artwork is really memorable, but none of the stories were super memorable to me. If you held a gun to my head and asked me what these were about, it's been a while and I would not be able to tell you. But I think if you're able to check this out from the library, I would really, really recommend it. It's a good kind of one-time graphic novel read. Next is Witches by Scott Snyder. This is a really popular one within the horror graphic novel world. And the premise of this is that everything you thought you knew about witches is wrong, and that it's much creepier and darker than you would ever imagine. And the Rooks family move to Litchfield, New Hampshire to escape a haunting trauma. and hoping to start over when obviously that does not work out well. This is such a nasty little witch story, and it reminds me, the feeling of reading this really reminded me, even though it's not similar, of the feeling I had watching the horror movie The Witch, which is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. My only caveat with this is just that I wish it was twice as long. Some pieces, especially the ending, felt really rushed, but this is definitely one of my favorites of all time. Then we have The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, and actually I think that's sitting over on my shelf, but I'm too lazy to refocus and go get it. I loved the artwork in this one. I don't really have too much to say about it, I feel like I have more thoughts about Sabrina the TV show, because that is one where it started off so strong and I was so excited, and then it just went full Riverdale off the deep end and I had to quit it. But I actually enjoyed the graphic novel more than the TV show. I think the graphic novel is better than the show, but I will say I like Sabrina, her version in any TV show, more than I liked Sabrina the character. In the graphic novel, I thought her character was a little bit dull. And again, I only read kind of the main first volume, so maybe her character progresses a little bit more in a different way. But I thought Sabrina was a little bit boring, but still overall really enjoyed it. Then we have After the Rain, and this takes place in a small Nigerian town during a violent and unexpected storm. And a Nigerian American woman, she hears a knock on the door, opens it and answered it, and there is a young boy, and I think she's a detective from the States visiting her family in Nigeria, if I'm remembering correctly. And she opens the door and there is a boy with a really severe head wound, and I won't say anything else from there because I don't want to spoil it, but she must embrace her heritage in order to survive. And this one, it's not the most graphic in terms of horror out of everything on this list, but there are a couple images, and this is all I'll do, if you've read it you'll know what I mean, that really stuck with me. And I love that the colors were so vibrant. I think so often with horror graphic novels they'll use a lot of gray and blue tones and keep it really muted, but this was so vibrant and colorful, but also really graphic and horrifying. I absolutely love this one. I just wish that it's a similar critique to Witches. I just wish this was a little bit more fleshed out. I believe it's the first in a series, so I might feel a little bit more differently as others come out, but I wanted more. And now we're gonna move into those that I gave 5 out of 5 creepy candles. This is going to be, I don't know if there's anything else to say because I'm sure you all have already read it, but Lock and Key by Joe Hill. This is easily one of my favorites of all time. There's a reason that it's so popular. There's a reason that it was made into a TV show. This is one of the really few instances where I want to actively go back and reread a graphic novel series. And if any of you know of any that are similar in tone to this, that you love just as much, please let me know. But again, I'm not going to summarize it because I'm sure you all already know what it's about. Next, we have Ghosts, and this is very different than the others on the list. It is horror and creepy because it has to do with ghosts, of course, but it's by no means graphic or super scary. This one, on the opposite end of the spectrum, is really touching and sad and sweet and has much more of a focus on family. But this takes place in Northern California. A family has moved there because their little sister Maya is sick, and they think that living there will help with her cystic fibrosis. And this one, even just thinking about it makes me want to cry. I love it so much. And again, it's one of the few that I really want to go back and reread. But if you want more of a sweet, family, sad, creepy graphic novel, I highly recommend Ghosts. And finally, this will probably be no surprise if you've followed my channel for a number of years, but number 1, even though, again, this has not been in order, is Uzumaki by Junji Ito. Of course, he is kind of the king when it comes to horror mangas, and I've read, I want to say 3 by him, and this is my favorite so far. But this has to do with a small town on the coast of Japan that is cursed, and people are haunted by a single pattern, a spiral. And what he does such an amazing job of is taking an idea that seems very simple and mundane that we wouldn't typically think of being as scary, right? It's literally just a shape, a spiral. But the ways that this just continues to escalate is absolutely horrifying. But if you've read others by him, please let me know which is your favorite of all time. So those were all of the horror graphic novels I wanted to chat about that I've read recently. I'm always looking for new ones to check out and read, so please let me know which ones are your favorites, or if you loved or didn't like any of the ones I've talked about so far. I hope you all are doing well and staying safe, and I'll see you in the next one.